Hi, I'm Daryl Forte with Everlast Software. Today I wanted to try to give a really quick overview of Bitcoin. I'm constantly asked about it and people don't really understand it, which is completely understandable. It's extremely complex and abstract. So the first thing I wanted to mention is it's considered a cryptocurrency, which is kind of different than what a digital currency is, or a digital representation of a currency. Just as an example, when you go to the bank and you deposit a check that someone wrote to you, there's no physical money being exchanged there. You're not taking dollars that the person gave you and putting them into a bank account. It's a check. So it's someone saying that they are giving you this representation of money. That is a digital representation of the US dollar. Bitcoin and cryptocurrencies are something completely different. They really have nothing to do with a dollar or any other currency except for the fact that they're worth something. Just the same as like gold or silver. They have actual value based on what people think they're worth. Now, what's the difference between a cryptocurrency and a digital representation? Digital representation is just a bunch of ones and zeros represented by some entity, in the case I'm talking about here, a bank or a central bank, telling you how much money you have in your account. That can be manipulated and hacked at any point. It's completely different than a cryptocurrency. The word crypto is coming from the word cryptography. So cryptocurrencies use encryption and built-in cryptography mechanisms to ensure the consistency and the ability to spend the money. If someone were to get a hold of your private wallet or your private key, they can spend your money in Bitcoin. However, most of the time your wallet and your key is encrypted with a password that only you have chosen. Only you know about it. And if it's done right with the proper software, it is encrypted with a very powerful algorithm, and ideally you have it somewhere offline. So you don't have your wallet or your private key on a computer that's hooked up to the internet. If you are, yes, you're vulnerable and someone can hack or steal your private key and get all the money in your Bitcoin wallet. If you're using an cold wallet or an offline wallet and you create your transactions offline and then transfer them to a computer which can send them up to the Bitcoin network, you're safe. Unless someone's standing over your shoulder or recording what you're doing on that offline computer or cold wallet, they can't steal your money. It's actually much, much more safe than carrying dollars around in your wallet. Now, all this being said, the way Bitcoin works is every single transaction that has ever been made is recorded and made publicly available. So, since the beginning of time for Bitcoin, which was 2008, which was created by an alias named Satoshi Nakamoto, every transaction that's ever been made, every Bitcoin that's ever been mined, has been recorded in what's called this public ledger. Another name for this is called the blockchain. All cryptocurrencies use blockchain. Blockchain is the underlying technology, and that's what's going to be hard to explain about Bitcoin and all these other things. There's so many technologies built on top of each other. That's what makes this so difficult to understand. But the way to think about it is Bitcoin has this public ledger. Just imagine a gigantic book like you'd see in a library maybe that just says source and a destination, source and destination, and it has amounts for all of these. You could see for every single wallet where the money came from and where it went to. Now there's no identifiable information to these wallets or these hashes of the wallets. So you don't know that wallet XYZ123 blah 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 belongs to Daryl Forte. Now there's ways you can indirectly find that out. I'm not saying that Bitcoin is 100% anonymous, but what I am saying is when you look at the blockchain and the public ledger, there's no personal information in there. Source address, destination address, and the amount. Now transactions can actually have multiple amounts spent at the same time, but that's going on a tangent. So anyway, since every transaction is public, that's what makes Bitcoin fantastic. You can go back and see at any point in time who mined a certain amount, where that money was sent, who received it, and that's actually how you determine how much money is in a Bitcoin wallet. There is no such thing as a balance in a wallet stored somewhere. In the real world, with a bank account or checking account, it does. It has a value stored in there, how much you have in there. That's not at all how Bitcoin works in the blockchain. In order to figure out how much money is in a given wallet, you start from the very beginning and you look at every single transaction that's ever been made to that wallet and from that wallet. Then you calculate on the fly the resulting difference. So for example, let's say you originally transferred some real US dollars to Bitcoin and someone else gives you the Bitcoin. What you're going to see in the blockchain is, let's say their address was ABCD and yours is 123. Of course, I'm making these real simple. They're actually very complex numbers and characters. But what you would see in the blockchain is ABCD transfers 100 Bitcoin to 123. If that's the only transaction that's ever been made to your 123 wallet, then right away you can calculate I have 100 Bitcoin in my wallet. Now let's say you decide to send 20.5 Bitcoin to wallet AAA. Well, the next time it calculates how much money's in your wallet, it's going to first do the 100 deposit, then it's going to subtract 200.5, and then that will tell you how much money's in your wallet. So here's the other interesting concept that a lot of people don't understand. When you create a wallet, you have a private key that only you hold on to. You don't want anyone else to have that. And you have a public key, which you give to everyone. The public key has the ability for you to receive money. It's actually a hash, a representation of your public key. So you'll see a string of characters. I'm going to go to the next slide here so I can show you an example. If you look on the second area here, that string right there is my personal public wallet hash key. So this key or this hash can be given to anyone. So if someone wants to send me money, that's all they need, is that sequence right there. The really cool thing is it actually has built-in error protection. So if someone's not copying and pasting it, but they're actually typing this out or they're trying to write it down, if they screw up one of the characters there, there's a really good chance that the Bitcoin network's going to detect that and say, no, there is no wallet like that. Because in that encoding, there's actual special bits that can detect that something changed that shouldn't have changed. That's pretty cool, huh? So the whole concept, all these public, private key things I'm talking about, it's really complicated. But what you have to realize is it's based on mathematics. The whole concept of hashing, having this number here, is that it's a one-way direction. It's a one-way mathematical algorithm. The public key can actually be used to validate that money was sent with the private key because of this one-way hashing mathematical algorithm that they use. The particular one they use is called SHA-256. Way too complicated to explain in this video, but just keep in mind that these keys are related. Every time you create a wallet, public and private key. Once again, you hold the private key. You don't want anyone else to get it. That's why you usually encrypt it with a really strong password. Now, you can ask yourself, well, how have I heard on the news all of these Bitcoins being stolen? It wasn't from people and their personal private wallets or their private keys. That's not how it was stolen. They had their Bitcoins deposited in an exchange, which is kind of like giving it to a bank. These exchanges keep your Bitcoins in their wallet, and you have to trust the fact that their wallet doesn't get broken into. And that's what happened. Someone got into their wallets in some cases. Other cases, it's fraud. They have your money now, so they can do whatever they want with it. Completely different when you have your own private key encrypted, and especially if you have it in a cold wallet offline. Now, the other really cool thing about Bitcoin is you can take your private key, encrypt it, and print it to a printer. You could pass that private key string out to all kinds of people. They won't be able to get to your real private key because they would need the password to decrypt that printout. To me, that's just amazing and fantastic. You could print it out, leave it on your shelf there, and it doesn't matter. As long as you have that really good password stored in your brain, no one's going to be able to get to it. At least not now, till they come up with mind reading ability. Now, all that being said, it depends on the fact that you choose a really good password, 16 plus characters, with numbers, special characters embedded in it, and it's not in a dictionary or can be recreated using some kind of logic or social engineering. Then there's no way anybody's going to be able to get into your private key. Okay, so one more concept I want to mention to kind of semi-understand this is how mining works. So in the real world, let's say you're mining for gold, you have to send out people that know where to look for the gold. It's very rare. You can only find it in certain areas. And for the most part, gold occurs in little bitty flakes, and it's very hard to mine. That is one of the reasons why it's so expensive. It's rare and it's hard, and it takes a lot of money to actually generate gold out of the ground. The concept is the same with Bitcoin. The way it's designed is the miners are converting electricity or processing power into Bitcoin. And the way they do it, once again, it involves mathematics. Too complicated to get to in this video, but essentially it's a lottery. They are spending time validating transactions that people have made with Bitcoin. Like, let's say, for example, I want to buy a cup of coffee for 0.1 Bitcoin. When I purchase the coffee, my transaction goes up into the Ether or the transaction pool. It is not in the public ledger yet. It has not been put in the blockchain. So it's floating out there in the middle of nowhere. The way it becomes validated and put into the blockchain is by the miners. The miners will be grabbing all these transactions and creating what's called a block, which is, hundreds and hundreds of transactions grouped together. The way they do it is typically they will choose the transactions that have the highest fees associated with them. When you pay someone, you get to set the fee on how much you want the miners to earn. So that's motivation right there for the miners to grab your blocks first. If you don't care about your transactions being validated quickly, then you can set the fee extremely low, and it might take days before it gets validated, but you didn't have to hardly pay anything. If you want it expedited, put a high fee on it, and the miners are going to grab it as soon as possible. It just so happens with the way Bitcoin's designed, about every 10 minutes is how long it takes for a new block to be validated. And that's pretty much worst case scenario. So if you happen to do a transaction and a block had been mined 9 minutes ago, you might actually have yours validated in about a minute or two. Not very likely, but it's possible. So because of the way Bitcoin works, really to be safe, to guarantee that your transaction has been validated, you need to wait about 60 minutes. So don't make any big purchases and send out the product to someone without waiting about an hour. The reason is because it is possible that multiple people at the same time validate blocks and your transaction gets undone and put back into the ether. So if you send a car, let's say someone buys a car from you and you're like, oh yes, I finally sold it, and you send the car out to them right away, let's say within 10 minutes, it's possible that your transaction doesn't go through. Well, guess what? You just sent them the car and now you don't have the money. Big problem. So wait an hour and then you don't have to deal with that. Of course, you're buying a cup of coffee. The guy's not going to wait an hour to validate that your money went through before he gives you the cup of coffee. I'm just talking about expensive things here. But anyway, the miners make money by mining. So they're motivated to win this lottery. And they're trying to generate a hash that's lower than a target number set by the Bitcoin network. This number is constantly adjusting up and down based on how much processing power the whole planet has at the time. So once a miner does generate a hash that's lower than the target, they won. They can add their block to the blockchain. They'll communicate with maybe 2 or 3 Bitcoin nodes next to them. And I'm not talking physically, but just on the Bitcoin network. And it just starts propagating real rapidly to the rest of the network. Again, it's possible that someone else does it about the same time, and now you got forks. They're called soft forks spawning across the network. 6 blocks is as far as the Bitcoin network will allow this to go, and whoever has the longest chain of these blocks wins. Their transactions go into the public ledger or the blockchain, and then everything goes through. So again, I know this is super complicated. You're probably going to have to listen to this 10 plus times to understand it, but once the miners have mined, they get a reward. They add your blocks to the blockchain. Now it is forever in the blockchain. Another concept that you need to understand is the blockchain has integrity built into it because of how hashes work in mathematics. If a single bit is changed in a blockchain, you can detect that at any point, and every transaction from that point on is invalidated. So what that means is no hackers can screw up or impersonate or steal money in the public ledger. The reason for this, besides the mathematics that can validate this, is every person out there that's doing mining and everybody that's considered a full node, they validate all the transactions. So if they ever detect that the node next to them has tried to add in an invalid block, they'll detect it right away and they'll reject it. So it's kind of like power to the people, which is really cool. You're not relying on a central authority. You don't have to trust anybody. Mathematics is magically saving the world. And that's just really cool. So anyway, I know these were a lot of abstract concepts, but hopefully that'll give you kind of an overall view of Bitcoin and how it works and why it's a lot more complicated than what people think. And I'm a huge advocate for cryptocurrencies and their usage in the future. It can actually go way beyond just money. It can go into contracts and all kinds of things that you want to be publicly known to everyone and to be validated with integrity. So I hope you enjoyed this. If you have any questions, feel free to comment and I'll try to answer your questions in the comment section. But I hope that helps.